I would love to hear your perspective on the customer trends and what are the customer preferences in terms of the payments. And maybe we can start with Martin.
I think this is a kind of a more generic question, so probably others are better suited to speak more generally. I was actually going to speak about a trend which I think is going to be really big this year, and that's really stablecoins and tokenization of payments. I mean, we've already seen some of it last year. Stripe acquired stablecoin infrastructure provider Bridge for $1 billion. I think this is like a 2-year-old company. I'm not sure. Somebody from MoonPay, I think, was supposed to be here. MoonPay acquired a company actually in December that's providing this stablecoin payments infrastructure. I think it's an interesting trend now, finally, because for those of you who have been sort of in blockchain and crypto, like there's been for years talk about like payments is the obvious application of crypto and blockchain. And obviously the main argument against crypto was like, what is this really useful for, right, in practical life? And payment was the answer, but actually it never really kind of took off. And it seems to be taking off now. And I think the reason why is really, we can discuss it at more depth and length, is because we have a few trends. One of them is that we finally have a clear regulatory framework for stable coins. And I think this is really critical because since we live in a world where we don't pay each other normally in Bitcoins or Ethereum, but we like to pay each other in zlotys, in euros, in dollars, you need to have an infrastructure that enables these payments. And effectively, stablecoins are a way of using blockchain with real fiat currency. So we have the regulatory framework. We have, I think we already have a critical mass for this. And last but not least, the regulatory framework is also enabling more traditional financial institutions, including banks, to actually start working with these types of providers.
Yeah, I think stablecoins are growing in importance, especially as a payment method in Africa, right? Because it provides less friction in the whole process. And as you said, like, I think crypto becomes more like a gold, right? Like people like doing speculations around it. And how does it look like in Poland, Wojtek? What do you think?
In Poland, majority of payments is based on traditional payment methods. The main payment method which is using by Polish end customers is BLIK. Do you know BLIK? BLIK is very simple and convenient solutions. And when we're talking in a group of PSPs about the payments, we have to know that user experience about the payments are a little bit different, because they at the end want to have very convenient method of payments, very easy to pay. I should say not pay, to buy something in the digital world. And of course, behind the scene, we have a lot of different payment schemes, and we have to organize these payments in different ways. But at the end, convenience is most important for our customers. And now in Poland, we mostly using BLIK and credit cards. This is perspective of Poland. But I see these new trends because we decided a few years ago to go abroad with our services, and in different countries the situation is different. That's why these regulatory issues are so important. These regulatory issues should be clear for everyone, for every player of the market.
I think we are leading towards the regulation discussion, but maybe before that, Alex, if you want to comment also on Asia, right? How the preferences are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. At Chavinet, we are strategically headquartered in Hong Kong. Asia Pacific is really at the in the avant-garde from a digital payments perspective. In fact, the first ever stablecoin specific regulation came into place in Japan. Obviously, you have my car here in Europe, which covers stablecoins, but the stablecoin specific was in Japan. And just recently in Hong Kong, in the last 6 weeks or so, we saw the Hong Kong Monetary Authority put out their own stablecoin regulation for essentially what we will start seeing now are stablecoins that are issued by commercial banks like HSBC, Standard Chartered, and whatnot. There is an explosion of stablecoin requests now coming through to us from all sorts of countries across Asia Pacific and maybe ASEAN more specifically. You know, remittance is a very clear use case. So as an example, you know, we're currently working with a company in Malaysia where they're looking to remit Malaysian ringgit back to India and back to Sri Lanka and back to Bangladesh. So I think what we're going to see now is a proliferation of non-US dollar denominated stablecoins. I do think though that you know there will be a bell curve here, so there will be an explosion, a proliferation, and then at one point a consolidation and shrinking, very similar to you know what we saw here in Switzerland. Up until 1850, when the SNB said that there could only be the Swiss franc, one currency in Switzerland, there were actually more than 860 currencies here in Switzerland. So I think to some extent we're going to see history repeating itself a little bit. I do want to say though that our view is that these regulated stablecoins, we see them as the bridge to central bank digital currency or retail CBDC. I think the central banks around the world are going to be watching very carefully the use cases, the design, the flows, and I think this is going to really help to shape the design and deployment of their own retail central bank digital currencies over time.
So I would love to get your perspective, Inga, on this. Right?
Thank you, Oscar. Definitely, from the European perspective, in my opinion, the European Central Bank is definitely at the front of the work on central bank digital currencies. And while the Eurozone doesn't cover some of the countries in the European Union, of course, Poland is one of those. In the end of the day, digital euro policy will affect those countries as well. The customers of the European banks usually have a few bank accounts. One of those is one in euro. So they will need to have an option of withdrawal in digital euro currency alongside normal euro, Polish zloty, Swedish krona, Czech krona, any other currencies. So it's very important as well to think from the perspective of the industry, of the financial services institutions, how to prepare for the arrival of those different currencies. On one hand, we are very pro-crypto in Asia and pro-stable coins in Asia and the same in the United States most recently. On the other hand, we will be very pro-CBDC in the European Union. Customers could be placed in different countries. Companies are international. Banks will need to definitely also rethink their infrastructure, how to make sure that the withdrawals happen instantly, that the transactions are seamless in terms of exchange. Something as well that in addition to regulations, we need to think about right now. From the ECB side, they are progressing very quickly with the development of digital euro, with scheduled provisional rollout date of the pilot in 2027, so it's literally 2 years ahead. From the perspective as well of the suppliers that they're selecting, they announced a really large tender for the components of digital euro just about 12 months ago. So we are anticipating that the experimentation of digital euro will commence this year and then will continue for the next 2 years. So I think this is the moment as well to look at the infrastructure of Polish banks, of Czech banks, Swedish banks, and thinking how we're gonna get ready for the arrival of multi-currency.
Alex, do you want to comment?
Maybe I just wanted to add, and maybe you know, echo to some extent what Inga's been saying about the need for commercial banks to get ready what's coming. Not to plug, not to shamelessly plug what we're doing at Chavanette, but we have something called SCARF, like what I've got around my neck, which is our strategic CBDC assessment and readiness framework, right? So this is really a diagnostic service that we provide to commercial banks to help them to understand how different functions within the bank are going to be affected, yes, by CBDC, but also stablecoin. And so I think that there is a reckoning that is coming, and I know each of you will have, be they Polish or other European banks in mind, but I spend a lot of my life orbiting the globe, as you can imagine, working with many different central banks on many different continents, and I would say that there is a long tail. If you did an ABC analysis, if you look at the long tail of smaller commercial banks and cooperatives in almost every jurisdiction, I think there's going to be a right sizing when CBDC comes along. And I think the early bird catches the worm, so to speak, or the early bird will come out ahead in this shift to the digital economy that we're seeing. I think certainly many commercial bankers that I talk to have absolutely no idea what's coming.
So we tackled a lot the topic of the regulation. So we are also discussing a MiCA regulation, right? So Wojtek, what's your perspective? How would it change Polish market?
I have to say that for us, of course, we are waiting for the final solutions in every part of payments, I should say, because at the end we are the integrator of different payment methods. When we talking with our merchants, with our end customers, they really want to have simple access to the secure payments. It doesn't matter. This digital currency is credit card, is BLIK. That's why we are waiting for clear rules every time. And that's why I fully agree with that. That especially from bank perspective, is very, very difficult to add something additional to the roadmap of development, because we have to know that if we start a discussion with the board members of the bank, they have a lot of different priorities now, not only digital currency. That's why for us regulations are very important, but we are very often prepare the technology for different payment methods. We are waiting for something would help us to implement this to our customers, but we should be sure that everything is secure and safety for our end customers. This is the perspective of every payment service provider. That's why we are waiting for the final regulation in Poland, but not only in Poland, because we just opened the office in Singapore, and we see that this picture of the market in Asia is totally different, and our approach should be different. This is very interesting for us.
If I may just add, I mean, in APAC, the big theme the last 10 years or so have been these super apps. So everyone would have maybe heard of WeChat. You would have heard of Alipay. You mentioned Singapore. There's Grab, right? And so these super apps, you see full integration, seamless integration and movement between finance, lifestyle, travel, communication, all in one. There's really nothing like that here in Europe. In the US, you've heard Elon now talk about X's Everything app. But again, this is old news in China. I was living in Shanghai 2015 to 2018. When I arrived in 2015, it's actually my second tour living in mainland China. But when I arrived in 2015, you could still pay cash almost everywhere. By the time I left in 2018, not even a taxi driver would accept a 100 RMB bill. And everything was replaced with WeChat, and everything was integrated into WeChat. And I think what we're going to see now, certainly with stablecoins as a payment method, is a lot of these stablecoins are going to be now integrated on the back end. And for end users, they just want something that works. They just want it to work.
Of course, this is crucial thing. At the end, user want to have secure and very convenient payment, and access to the source of the money. This is very, very easy.
Actually, I think two things. First one on MiCA, I think it's very simple. When it comes to payments, the importance of MiCA is due to one single thing, which is that it basically makes stablecoins legal. And because the stablecoins are legal, they can get regulated. So you can basically, it's a very clear framework that you can, and effectively it's an EMI license, electronic money institutions, like for any kind of payment institution. And why this is critical? Because it gives you access as an issuer to banks, banking infrastructure. So you can basically put deposits there, you can use their infrastructure, which was not the case. Actually, until MiCA, our main banking provider is Societe Generale. Like, forget it, 2 years ago to get a major European/global bank to work with a crypto company, right? But now they have no problem because we have exactly the same license as any other payments, e-payments providers in France. So I think that's the kind of big breakthrough. Going back to what you were saying about these super apps, I think, and we're actually working in this space. We're working with one of these very, very, very large apps that have, hundreds of millions of customers. And the goal there is to basically, same thing as with WeChat Money, you integrate a stablecoin, and if you actually can put all the payments infrastructure on top, you can do exactly the same thing as you would do with the WeChat app. You can basically use it for payments. So I think we're probably at the beginning of this Cambrian explosion where there's going to be some very interesting use cases. And again, I really believe that even in Europe, and maybe even in Europe ahead of US, simply because the framework is already here, it's clear, we're a few years ahead.
But BRIC is very good example how you can proceed very convenient payment method to the market, because maybe you remember the beginning that it wasn't so obvious that BRIC will be such a successful payment method, but they have had time. They invest a lot in solutions, in convenience of these solutions, and they of course cooperate with banks and with Mastercards.
Yeah, I think it's a very few.
Finally, now this is the majority of Polish payments.
Yeah, but I think it's the very few of the examples that the whole market cooperated on a joint project, right? And I think this is why it's successful, right? Yeah. So, Inga, I think also the first CBDC will be a major breakthrough. How the regulations help or doesn't help, and how the cooperation between the central banks in Europe looks like right now, right?
Sure, that's quite interesting because on one hand, everybody is afraid of CBDCs and the arrival of digital euro, digital pound. But on the other hand, this is a great opportunity for companies like your own. You will be able to process payments without any commercial banks above your head. So actually you're cutting off all those fees that you need to pay, whether it's 2.5 to Visa, MasterCard, or some commercial banks and so on. This is the opportunity for payment services providers to provide services that they didn't before due to the regulations. And that's something that digital euro policy will be changing. And very similarly from the United Kingdom point of view, they're definitely looking very closely at how the European Central Bank is rolling out the digital euro, how is the digital euro policy designed to ensure that the financial services infrastructure is strengthened in the European Union. And on the other hand, enable opportunities to European-based companies instead of American companies. You still have very strong influence from the US companies, whether it's Apple Pay, Google Pay. I believe all of us have those applications on our iPhones or Androids, very similarly with Visa and MasterCard. When you look at this, it's actually the monopoly of the American firms in the European Union. So this is the time, and with the help of the European Central Bank and the European Commission, to ensure that the European companies will be able to grow in the financial services sector. So I truly believe this is a great change.
I'm actually not holding my breath for European CBDC. I'm super skeptical about it. I've been following it. In fact, the first conversation I had with a vice governor of ECB was in 2018, and he told me, actually, don't even look at ECB, look at Riksbank, the Swedish central bank, they're way ahead. They were way ahead. The project kind of, I don't know what happened, but it seems half dead. And I think when it comes to the European CBDC, it's going to be very similar like EID. like EID, so electronic ID, right? So you basically, with an electronic ID, you should be able to prove your identity. For example, when you need to KYC, when you need to onboard with a new bank, right? You're opening an account with a bank, with a crypto exchange right now, you always have to provide all the same information. With an EID, you shouldn't have to. You should just basically be able to use your single login, all your ID data is there. Made perfect sense. We're very logical. We have the framework. It exists, except nobody's really using it. And I think same thing is going to happen with the CBDC. Just knowing the ECB. And I used to be part of ECOFIN. I was part of Eurogroup as deputy finance minister for many years. I really am very, very skeptical about the actual timing and then the impact, at least in the first years.
If I may, I think I woke up this morning to a flurry of WhatsApp messages from different people sharing with me that Trump is going to sign an executive order banning CBDC in the United States. It doesn't surprise me. I think we've known for some time that he's been quite negative on CBDC. Certainly Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has been negative. But I truly believe that he's ill-advised. And I think, there's a strong crypto lobby in the U.S. There's a few companies you could look at. I think the commercial banks, the large banks in the U.S., are realizing that, if the digital dollar comes into play, their goose is cooked, so to speak. There's a real risk of disintermediation and the kind of cartel and fee monopoly that they operate there. And for that reason, I think that's one of the strong forces behind the pro-crypto stance that we're seeing, and the talk from Trump of setting up an advisory council and the SEC task force, which is coming together. All of those things, I believe, are positive. But as we shift toward a digital economy, you're going to need to have, a sovereign form of digital money. You got to remember that stablecoins are not money. And we could debate that here all day, but stablecoins are a reference, right? They are fiat referenced. They are a reference to money. They are not money. When you hold on to CBDC in your wallet, you are holding on to a liability of the central bank, right? Like when you hold a 100 Swiss franc bill, that is a liability of the SNB. When you hold on to USDC, as I hold in my wallet right here, digital wallet right now, that is a liability of Circle Corporation, right? There's a fundamental difference there, right? And we know there is obviously precedent with the collapse of SVB Bank and various depeggings and whatnot that we've seen in the past, and they are sure to happen again, right? Crypto is wild, as we all know, so we will see repeats of this. But we got to think, for the crypto savvy, that might be fine. They can operate with that level of risk. But when you think about the base population, right, in every country, the people who need to have stability and not volatility in their lives, CBDC is really a no-brainer.
I think I kind of disagree with this one as well. I mean, I'm a stablecoin issuer, so obviously I'm very conflicted. But I think, again, because you could say the same thing with the bank, right? You put your money in the bank, so technically it's not a liability that you have versus the bank, but it's the same thing. Like if the bank does the wrong thing, so to speak, you lose the money there. And this is why we have relatively strong regulatory oversight over banking systems so that these things don't happen. So now moving on to crypto or quote unquote crypto, the stablecoin issuers, it's the same thing, right? You have the oversight there to ensure that the reserves are there so that worst case scenario, if the company collapses that's issuing it, everybody can actually get their euros back. And in a sense, actually your money is way safer with a properly regulated stablecoin issuer because it's fully backed, unlike in a bank, right? So if bank runs into problems, you are definitely cooked because they're not going to have enough, very likely, money sitting in their accounts to pay out all the customers. Whereas with a stablecoin issuer, you will, right?
Of course, but you're talking only about stablecoin issuers and commercial banks. I'm talking about the central bank, the lender of last resort, right? That's where you want the liability to sit.
Sure. But ultimately, it's still there, right? So, yeah.
Easy job as a moderator, but I think it's great that we have the discussion. Look, you mentioned Trump, right? So I need to ask this question, right? What about the meme coins and the fact that Trump and then his wife, right, issued the meme coin, one before the official announcement, and then the other one a bit later. Yeah. What do you think? What's the future of those?
I don't want to speculate on his motivation for doing so, although clearly, there's a lot of liquidity, certainly in the Trump coin still. So he or his administration, they have made money out of it so far. I think more than anything, it's just sending a signal. Do I think meme coins are going to be around forever? I think they may metamorphize kind of into something else eventually. I think in the last cycle we saw NFTs really took off, and there was great speculation around those. Meme coins are a big thing, but when it comes down to it, if you look on the Solana meme coin launch platform, pump.fun, right? That's been one to watch this cycle. I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of meme coins launched every single day. The only ones you really hear about are the ones that, for a number of reasons, and I believe it's the strength of the communities that are behind those, really kind of break through the 10 million market cap and then moon, so to speak. Yeah. And you hear about those ones, and you hear about those are the ones that got away from you, right? We all wish that we'd bought Whiff at 1 cent, right? Who would know that dog Whiff hat would end up with a multi-billion-dollar market cap? So what's the future of meme coins? Yeah, I'm not going to speculate, but it's certainly something to watch this cycle. What I can say, though, is we do talk to a lot of financial institutions, and they are increasingly using layer ones like Ethereum to build financial products, right, and to tokenize. And I think that is a trend that we're going to continue to see. And I think that will continue to drive value.
And this approach, what I really love, financial product. At the end, this is the financial product.
If I can bring it down there. So, this is, I think, why I'm excited actually about stablecoin. I think meme coins, I don't have much good to say about them, honestly. But the financial innovation that's starting to happen with stablecoins are actually very interesting. I mean, we're just launching a product with Ripple for cross-border payments from Europe and Euro to US and USD. And effectively, we're now able to execute a payment where you pay with your euros and the dollars arrived in your US account within minutes, right? So I think this is the real excitement. I mean, try to do it through a normal banking system. It's going to take days, right? And then we're talking literally minutes now where you can do it. But again, I don't want to be, talking badly about the banks, because the banks will still be a part of this process, right? We're still relying on banks because ultimately most people keep their money in banks. So if you want to send euros to US and convert them into dollars, you still very likely need a bank that holds your money in the first place, and that will then hold the money of your counterparty once you actually send it.
Absolutely, and I think they'll continue to provide all the services around mortgages and insurance and loans, etc.
I also think there is that step forward, because we got different type of services, such as, for instance, mortgages and loans, which in the end of the day would rather hold in legal tender rather than stablecoins or cryptocurrencies. So I believe, and I actually agree with you as well, that there is also a place for everybody here. Digital euro will be a legal tender. There's a digital euro policy. There's no way back from that. I think with the message sent by the ECB issuing a tender for almost up to 1 billion euros for 5 components of digital euro in 2024, that was a message. We are very serious about it. We assign a really large budget for it. This is happening. And the experimentation of digital euro is commencing this year. In the end of the day, we'll end up in a situation that we'll need to have interoperability infrastructure to be able to process legal tender in the form of e-money, legal tender in the form of digital euro, digital pound, digital Swedish krona, as well as stable coins and cryptocurrencies. So I think if we really would like to ensure that our end customer receives proper services, that the transactions are seamless, that we are not waiting for SWIFT transactions for up to 4 days to arrive if we send them after 5 p.m. on a Friday evening, then for sure we should prepare the infrastructure right now. And it will take us 2 years. So in 2 years' time, if we're gonna have digital euro pilot rollout, this is the moment for the financial institutions, PSPs, payment providers to get ready right now.
Good. So I think we are talking a lot about the trends which will be shaping the let's call it industry, but we haven't said anything about AI yet, right? And I think it seems like the whole theme of Davos this year, right? So what's your perspective on AI in the context, of payments, of digital currencies?
AI is definitely part of the game from years, not from weeks. We invested a lot in that area from, I should say, 2021, because from our perspective, that was the beginning of this technology. And of course, I see a lot of opportunities which we can implement in our business as usual processes. Of course, inside the company, we can automatize a lot of our procedures. Life is much easier, but also when we're talking about the customer perspective, we can do a lot of things with data and with AI agent to help proceed the transaction, to help the KYC processes, to implement anti-fraud, better anti-fraud solutions. I think that this is something what we for sure should implement in our regular activity. And this is very interesting because digital currency will happen for sure. I'm sure, but AI is something what we have now to implement. Of course, the regulation of AI, this is another story, but regulation will happen for sure. But now the difference between possibility of usage AI in Europe and the US is two different words. This is the little problem for us because at the end we never know what we can or what we can't do with AI algorithms now.
We're definitely at the top of the hype cycle when it comes to AI, right? But it's true, actually, if you look at the payments landscape, AI has been used for decade, if not more, right? I mean, it's AI that's been used for identifying fraudulent transaction. That is AI, right? I mean, it's different AI from ChatGPT, but that is AI. So I think that's one. Same thing for KYC, I think, or not KYC, but anti-money laundering. I mean, that's something that I think will probably be one of the kind of most and fastest growing applications within payments. Certainly, this is something that we're really very much looking to, because particularly, again, when you go to stable coins, it's kind of crypto, which kind of has a bad reputation, kind of unfairly, but yeah, the reputation being that, you have all kinds of nefarious actors who are using these tokens. Again, great to have AI that can actually help you identify any kind of suspicious transaction when it comes to money laundering.
And definitely data management. So central banks are looking very closely at analysis of data management across different jurisdictions. I believe this will definitely support. On the other hand, they're very afraid of the security of AI. So having open source AI, that's something that is at the moment being addressed by several projects in AI decentralization. Everybody's trying to address the security of the open source AI that we are having at the moment. So I believe that we are not yet there, but we'll get there. And definitely the financial services sector will look very differently in 10 years' time.
I think it's a very good point because I think AI is not only something which might help, but it's also a bit of a threat, right? Especially on the identity theft, etc. So thank you for that. Alex, any perspective also on?
I don't think there's really much I can add, only to say that the central banks that we're talking to who seek out our advice on which technology companies they should be considering for their CBDC projects are now part of the hype cycle, are now asking which companies include an AI component. It just seems like a blanket request. So, is that for transaction monitoring? Is it for data management? Is it for end user onboarding? There's been nothing specific, but we could imagine that they want it for all three.
I'm looking a bit at the time. I think we are close to the end, but maybe there are some questions from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned the USD euro payments. Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned the USD euro payments. What other types of early adopters do you see for MiCA compliant stablecoins? Within the Eurozone, let's say, or I mean, within the European Economic Area.
It's a difficult one because I was actually going to tell you definitely remittances and payments outside of Europe and particularly Africa. I mean, that's something that we're looking at. I mean, that's one area where I'm actually quite excited about because there you can see a real impact, right? I mean, if you look at Europe, particularly Eurozone, we have a very efficient payment system. So, in fact, arguing we need something else, it's probably the only and the best argument is that we could make it much cheaper with stablecoins, although still, arguably it's cheaper than in the US, but still quite expensive. So I think it's the cost, but really outside of Europe, I see banking the unbanked, basically.
Yeah, and can I just narrow down the question a bit? So, because on the crypto side, it's sort of intuitive, but in terms of building the bridge to the regulated markets, right? Which parts of the regulated financial markets do you think would be the early adopters? Yeah.
So as I said, payments, but tomorrow I understand there's a panel on tokenization, right? So I've been a crypto skeptic for many years. I'm a US trained economist. I bought my first Bitcoins in 2013, but against my best convictions, right? I thought this is just kind of not nonsense, but almost nonsense. And I've actually, over the years, I have really become convinced that blockchain is simply just a much better technology than anything else we have for storing and moving financial value. So inevitably, financial services will move on chain. And definitely much, I think, if not most of the real world assets will get tokenized, bonds, equities. So I think that's definitely one area that we see. There's been a lot of progress or a lot of happening there as well over the past couple of years. But I don't dare to kind of give you a timeline. Okay, is this going to really explode and happen in 2 years, or is it going to be more like 10 years?
If I could maybe add that the European Central Bank is already conducting a pilot on wholesale CBDCs on a blockchain. That's for the purpose of tokenized assets going forward. So you got many pilots happening as we speak, and I think they will not have a choice. They will have to go ahead with blockchain asset technology to be able to go forward. So, and it's also very important that we separate the assets from the technology. So crypto, stable coins, CBDCs, some of those may be issued on account-based technology, not token-based technologies. But in the end of the day, interoperability is blockchain-based.
Can I have, I will be leading your panel tomorrow on the tokenization, by the way, so if somebody wants to come over, it will be interesting discussion. But I would like to give you a little bit feedback from Switzerland and the question because the Swiss government decided to introduce CBDC on wholesale CBDC only, purposefully, because there was issue with banks, which, they will be holding deposits if everybody will be holding deposits with central banks. So it was no go for the banks. But what has happened in Switzerland, instant payments between customers and consumers started working much quicker. So we do have instant payments at the end. So the question is, will you see similar development in different countries if there is threat that there might be CBDC as fiat, that we will have instant payment quicker, speedier, and cheaper?
Yeah. Maybe just really quickly, we see instant payment systems, fast payment systems as a precursor to CBDC. So in the US, seemingly out of nowhere, the FedNow system appeared. In India, you have the UPI. Then you have the likes of the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub project, Project Nexus, which is the connecting of fast payment systems worldwide, again, as what we see as a precursor to CBDC. Doesn't mean it's going to happen instantly, to use the term, but this is a stepped approach. Sorry, that's our view.
And from the European perspective, very similarly, in the United Kingdom, we have instant payments very similarly in the European Union. On the wholesale side, I agree with you. This is a very different project. So the ECB separates both pilots. Retail CBDC will look very differently to wholesale CBDC. Of course, they're thinking again about interoperability, how they're going to bridge the two currencies, but not only with wholesale CBDC in euro. They're also thinking about how they're going to bridge this with the Polish zloty, which at the moment is not exploring CBDC whatsoever, or with British pound. The technology choices from the pilots, at least I've been involved with, are very different. What they're looking at, and I believe that they agree on, offline payments. So that's something that you will not be able to be provided with when it comes to stablecoins or crypto. But not only from the perspective of remote payments, but also from the perspective of civil contingency. So in case that something happens, we don't have any access to the internet, mobile networks and so on. They want to make sure that you are able to withdraw the money and pay for the basic groceries to survive.
Thank you. So I don't see any. There is a question. Yes.
Yeah, that's all right. Adrian Zdunchuk, CMT. Congratulations on an incredibly interesting panel. I think we should have more and more of these panels, especially here in Davos. Taken back 2 years, or even over 2 years, there was an official paper, kind of like a recommendation from a Basel committee on the participation of central banks, right, and the participation of just a fraction of a percentage, maybe, of different types of crypto assets, Bitcoin, stable coins, utility tokens, and make it as an efficient part of the actual reserves to the central banks. So I wanted to kind of like, after 2 years passed, I wanted to check if there is any change whatsoever that you are aware of that are being perhaps implemented, since they were supposed to be started. They were supposed to be starting kind of like implemented on the January 1st this year.
From the perspective of digital euro, definitely there is a progress. The investigation phase of digital euro was completed last year. They commenced the design phase of digital euro. I can tell you that what's coming this year is the experimentation of digital euro that they will be performing with different players from the market. So they make public announcements about it as well. And like I've mentioned before, when we were talking about the tender that they issued for the 5 components of digital euro, with a very large budget up to 1 billion euros, that is also a very clear message. They're very serious about building that. I have not seen the formal announcements who's been selected to the development of these 5 components, but that also tells you how serious they are about digital euro, as well as the digital euro policy, which is at the moment still under investigation. Of course, is waiting parliamentary approval. Nevertheless, the draft is there, the amendments have been made, and the process is happening. The provisional date for the issuance of digital euro, according to the public messages, was 2027. So when we look at this, it's about 2 years. I'm not sure it will happen in 2027 when I'm looking at the technological development of digital euro. Nevertheless, from my personal opinion, it's going to happen.
Maybe I'd just like to add to what Inga said. For those that are new in the room and didn't hear my introduction at the start, I'm based in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a particularly interesting jurisdiction to watch for a number of reasons. Obviously, we were formerly a British colony when I grew up there, and we still have a version of what's called one country, two systems. And from a crypto standpoint and digital asset standpoint, what that means is crypto they take a very progressive approach to crypto in Hong Kong. We're issuing licenses left, right, and center to crypto exchanges. There's OTC crypto all over the place. But then on the regulated side, I think Hong Kong is very good at doing these things very quietly. So obviously we have the ECNY, right, in China, which is still technically in a pilot. We won't go on and speculate why it's still considered a pilot when there are hundreds of millions of users. I would say there's a lot of fake news out there talking about how few transactions there are using it. I've used it. I would say that's not true. I would also, again, keep an eye on Hong Kong because we are a separate jurisdiction, right? We are in China, but we're a separate jurisdiction. So we have free flow of capital in Hong Kong, which you don't have in China. We have 3 note issuing banks, right? So HSBC, Standard Chartered, and Bank of China, Hong Kong. And just very quietly last year, all of a sudden you could use ECNY in Hong Kong, right? And you can use your Hong Kong HSBC app, which I have here with me, to travel to China and top up my ECNY account, right? So, and you can do that just seamlessly as you're catching the bullet train from Kowloon to Shenzhen, which takes 12 minutes. Again, they just opened this thing quietly. The other night I took off on a, 2 nights ago, I took off on a 3rd runway in Hong Kong, which basically got, on page 4, like a small little column on a random Tuesday that they'd opened. They'd basically effectively doubled the size of the airport in no time. I'm originally Australian, and in Australia, if they're talking about building a new runway, you're going to hear about it for 30 years, and it's going to be on page 1 or 2 the whole time. In China, the pace with which they move on everything, be it infrastructure, physical or financial, it's really phenomenal, and I would encourage everyone to come out and have a look. And even if you don't want to spend time in mainland China, come to Hong Kong and play around with all the different apps that we have, which include the ECNY. So while I, of course, follow all the Western press and, this negative Nellyism around, it's not going to happen, I'm long China. I think you would be foolish to bet against them. And if you look at what's happening with One Belt, One Road, if you look at their influence in the region and also more widely in the world, the ECNY is one of the main pillars there. So I think it would be foolish for countries to ignore what's happening there and to not be interoperable with the ECNY in the fullness of time. So maybe I'll leave it there.
I can add that even when we looking at the payment service providers perspective, we see the big difference between 2022 and now. We see that every conversation with our partners is also the topic, the digital currency, what will happen in the next month, not years. And the difference is visible. I remember my discussion with colleagues from banks 2 years ago. It's nothing gonna happen now, and they are trying to prepare for that new reality. And of course, digital currency is, I think, nearest future, because even our end customers want to have this payment method available. That's why this is for sure the future. And of course, I fully agree with you that especially when we're talking about the instant payment and the cost of the payments which we have every day, that will be the big game changer. Local perspective is different because in Poland we have instant payments from years. Our financial system is very modern. Banks have a lot of functionalities for the end customers, but when we are looking abroad, it's not so easy to organize the simple product for the end customer without such solutions which we discussed today.
So thank you very much, and thank you for the active discussion. Before I let you go, maybe just final question, but let's make it very short. What would be the most positive trend in the coming year, and what would be the largest challenge for the payments and financial services? And I'll start with Inga, maybe.
Always the most difficult questions. Definitely the trend I will see is multi-CBDCs and multi-currency trend. And I believe a very urgent message, which is also a challenge, get ready to the financial institutions and also PSPs, get ready for multi-currency future. Thank you.
I think the biggest challenge would be actually specific implementation rules regarding stablecoins by EBA, because the devil is always in the detail. So MiCA is a good framework, but you can really mess things up with one simple implementation rule. And the most positive trend, I think, would be the kind of continuous interest of more traditional payments institutions in the stablecoins, and how can this really be used and integrated?
For us, this possibility of new technologies are brilliant. I should say that I can imagine the future of payments will be much easier for the end customer. Payments for sure will be more seamless, and this is what we are expecting for the next few years. That technology will help us to develop the quality of service for the end customer.
So I think in terms of positive trend, I think we're going to continue to see increased technical and regulatory interoperability. Again, a lot of this happening on the back end, right? The idea here is that the average person just knows that it works, that they can pay peer-to-peer with different stable coins, different currencies, and again, that it's seamless. It's a seamless experience for them, and I think that will just lead to greater adoption. Leave it there.
So once again, thank you, and thank you to the audience for active participation.